Welcome back to hour number 2 of the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. Here's a question that a lot of people, I think, are asking nowadays, and it's a good one to analyze. Are America's best days behind us? Really? With us this morning is a gentleman who's thought about this quite a bit. His name is Frans Jaeger. He's an author and business consultant and has a brand new book out on this as well. But he came from the Netherlands to America, and he said the choice was easy at the time. When I evaluated the future of America versus the future of Western Europe, Europe was overshadowed by the communist Soviet Union and caught up in socialist ideals. So America, on the other hand, seemed destined to be the sole bastion of freedom and capitalism. That was 30 years ago. Wonder if he feels the same way now. We welcome to the show Frans Jaeger this morning here on the Gary Sutton Show. Frans, great to have you on. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary. I'm delighted to be on your show.
Well, it's an honor to have you, sir. And you have a brand new book out right now. Tell us a little bit about that. I think it's called Neither Here Nor There, a first-generation immigrant in search of American exceptionalism, right?
Yes. Well, I'm essentially a business person. I spent all of my life in business, but there was a time for me too to retire, and that came about 3 years ago. And when that happened, I was awfully at loss as to what to do with my time, and so I decided to write a book because this is a question that had intrigued me all along. I had, as a first generation immigrant, I had taken a momentous decision to transport my whole family from the Netherlands to the United States, and I thought it was appropriate for me to evaluate if all of my expectations of the time that I had when I did that have come to pass, and I think you have already disclosed that essentially my answer is no, not entirely.
You know, it was interesting, though. I think it's important to get it from a perspective of someone who has come to America and become a citizen in a different way. And you did that 30 years ago. You pick up, you leave another country, you say, I'm coming here. It looks like a land where, you know, there's freedom, there's capitalism, there's some exceptionalism maybe. And it's something different. So now you've had 30 years to go through this. You've had 30 years to make your livelihood, plant your family here, plant new roots. And a lot of people are asking the very same question you're asking right now. Are our best days behind us? We'd like to think not, but by the same token, a lot of us are looking around right now wondering, where did the America go that we thought we knew? And we're being told, well, that America was wrong, that there's a different kind of America that's out there. So kind of take it from there, if you will, what you've seen over the 30 years that make you happy about our country and the things that you see that maybe have really inflicted some serious damage.
Well, what makes me happy is that I have a unchanged optimism that there is no nation in the world that is better equipped and better positioned to be a leader in the world and to have the very highest level of prosperity.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're absolutely right on, but go ahead.
But we don't always live up to our expectations. I just happened to read a column by David Brooks in the New York Times this morning, and what David writes is, and I fully agree with that, the country is palpably in the middle of some sort of emotional recession. Yet over the past 5 years, the political class has done essentially nothing. That will fill future generations with astonishment and should fill the current generation with rage. America is significantly underperforming against its potential, and it is mostly in the public sector. Our private sector is doing fine. The best of our businesses are doing excellent on a world scale. Our public sector is where the problem is.
You know, I was struck by something the other week, and I don't want this to be political, our conversation. I want it to be more just about what we see that could make America better and what we see that maybe is hurting us right now. But the president did say something the other week, which is an example of what you just said, where he comes out and he talks about energy. I think he was talking to the Black Caucus at the time, and he came out and he talked about energy. He said, you know what? Our energy, our oil-producing energy is up in this country, natural gas and so forth, 61%. We ought to be really proud of that. Well, that sounds great. And then you look at the 61% and you realize that 61% all from the private sector. Whereas the public sector under the government is minus 3% in what they're doing.
Yes.
And so you say, well, wait a second. So they're sitting back and they understand what is right in America and what should be going right in America and what Americans maybe want to hear, and yet they are the impediment. They're standing in the way of us in doing those kind of things. We see the same kind of thing when we talk about they want to talk about the minimum wage a lot of times, people in this country. And then we say, well, what about getting out of the way for people, I'm sure like you, who came here and said, I'm looking for the maximum success in this country, wherever that is, and if you get out of my way, I could probably do that. I've got some pretty good work ethic and some pretty good ideas. So from a non-political standpoint, there are two of the arguments right there that lie out there in front of us.
My book is totally apolitical. I think if we have a problem in the public sector, it is not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue.
I agree.
In fact, both parties are culpable of doing nothing, and both parties are equally culpable of putting us highly in debt. The national debt in the time that I have been in this country, 35 years, has risen from $1 trillion, which was considered a problem in Ronald Reagan years, to $17 trillion, and we haven't bought anything of value for it, and that is to me the key. It's one thing to put yourself in debt to acquire assets or to create a future of prosperity, but we have increased our debt from $1 trillion to $17 trillion without solving any problems and without getting anything of value for it, and that's a shame, and we need to ask ourselves, what are we going to do about it?
If I looked at my credit card and I said, okay, I got $1,000 debt, okay, got to deal with that, but the payments I'm going to make are going to be relatively reasonable, and I can pay it off in a fairly short period of time. If I go to $17,000 worth of debt, I look at that and I say, how did I get there? What did I do? Geez, I'm not sure I can pay that off right now. I've got a lot of other things going on. I mean, that's kind of the same comparison from the private sector level when you look at the government level. And yet there seems to be one of the things in this country, and you make a great point of saying this in your book. You talk about the idea that what's most startling is that all but a few of the problems that America faces already have solutions. It's just that we don't seem to like to choose the right thing. And there still is right and wrong. And if you say we're $17 trillion in debt, what are we doing about making that better and spending within our means and correcting that? There are people that just simply don't want to do that. They don't want to correct it. I mean, like the normal person would be out here who would be absolutely frenetic about trying to, fix their debt and bring it down and have no debt.
Yeah. So David Brooks asked the right question. Where is the outrage?
Yes.
How come that all the people that are hit by this, and there are many people. I mean, let's face it, most Americans are not doing as well as they should, and most Americans have a real trouble getting from one day to the other.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way. But where is the outrage? Well, I mean, if the public doesn't speak up, I don't think anything will happen. It almost, I hate to say this, but it almost takes a revolution of sort to get a shock to the system.
Oh, I'm totally in agreement, and I think the revolution, I'm not necessarily saying a violent one, but I am saying a revolution of thought, a revolution of how we look at things needs to come about. One of the things that you talk about in your book, though, Frans, is, and I think this is really an important one, we hear a lot of people say today about the increased inequality, the disappearance of the middle class, the assault, if you will, on the middle class, the fact that we have this class warfare going in this country on a level that I've never seen before, and it's being exploited by a lot of people, particularly in the political end of things. However, I look at this and I say, okay, what is causing that inequality right now? Is it the wealthy, or is it, again, the government getting in the way of all of us being able to pursue maximums as opposed to minimums? Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that it is a problem that's created by the government, and it is because the government does not do its job. Inequality is a result of us not solving the immigration problem, of us being in so much in debt that we can't afford to spend the money things that need to be financed. We haven't solved the education problem. I mean, the student debt has increased, is now the biggest category of debt after mortgages. It's over $1 trillion. People, the cost of education has way run away from us, and it makes it virtually impossible for people in the lower income ranges to get a good education and do something positive.
People are getting priced out. You know, when you're watching commercials, for example, one of the things that I think is always interesting, when you're watching commercials and you don't have the ability to buy what's in that commercial or even come close, and it's something that's kind of being shot out to all people, you say, what happened? Where am I going? That doesn't make any sense to me. We're talking with Frans Jaeger this morning, who is the author of Neither Here Nor There, a first-generation immigrant in search of American exceptionalism. Why? I guess I want to ask you a question. Why does our government continue to produce poor results in terms of helping to clear the deck for us to be successful in this country?
I see four major problems with our public governance system. Number one, I think our two-party system is working against us. I think the system would be better off if there was a centrist third party that could get things moving. Second, our election system. It is unconscionable that we have elections every 2 years, and that our politicians have to spend virtually all of their time chasing money for their next election campaign. I mean, even also the president at the White House. He has maybe 2 years to govern, and then he has to be on the prowl to get finance for the. So that's the third problem: the money influence in our politics. We kid ourselves if we think that our Congress people are truly people's representatives. They are beholden to the people that finance that pay for their election campaigns, because they can't afford to alienate them. And so I think we've strayed far away from a direct people representation. And the fourth issue, which is probably equally important, is the fact that we have no national strategy. There is no. If you're a business, you have a strategic plan for the future. America has no strategic plan for the future that says this is where we want to be in 5 years or in 10 years, and have a plan that is accepted with bipartisan consensus.
That it makes sense to everybody, and I think that's what we're asking for. That last one, I think, is the most important, that we have no strategic plan. And people say, well, we're not a company. We ought not be run by a company as a company. Yeah, we are. With the United States of America Incorporated, the stockholders aren't real happy right now. That's we, the people. And what are we going to do to come up with a strategic plan of where we want to be and what we want to turn over to our kids later on? We're going to come back. We're going to come back, friends, and just take a very quick break. And I want to ask you this question when we come back. Is America still exceptional? And can we get that? If it's teetering a little bit, can we get that back? I'm going to ask you how. We're talking with Frans Jaeger this morning, who is the author of a new book called Neither Here Nor There, a first-generation immigrant in search of American exceptionalism. Hey, you know what? Are America's best days behind, or are they still out ahead? Frans will tell us when we come back here on the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA with Frans Jaeger, who is author and business consultant. Also the author of a new book out there called Neither Here Nor There, a first-generation immigrant in search of American exceptionalism. He came here over 30 years ago and has had 30 years to find out what America's all about, and are America's best days behind it. So, Frans, you deal with a lot of this in your book, but the question out there is America still exceptional? Is it still the exceptional place that you saw when you came here 30 years ago compared to kind of more of a socialistic-looking Europe?
If you wouldn't ask me, but you would ask Warren Buffett, he would say yes, and he puts his money where his mouth is. All of his investments are in American enterprise, and I agree with him. My wife and I just finished a 3-week tour of the national parks in Utah and Colorado.
Oh, wow.
And if you drive through that landscape, you see how exceptional America is in its natural beauty, in its natural resources. There is no doubt that America is still exceptional, but the politicians will have to deliver some good to make it happen, and that gets to the national strategy. We need a national strategy to say we want to stay on top of the world. We want to maintain a leadership position in all respects in the global constellation, and have a national plan that articulates the steps that need to be taken to get there. Without that, I'm not so sure. It doesn't happen automatically. Just like a business will fall back if it doesn't execute and stay with a strategy, so will a country fall back if it's floundering and it doesn't really know where it's going.
After writing your book, were you able to answer the question, are our best days behind us? Are they behind us, or are they still in front of us?
I believe they are still in front of us, but it will take some heavy lifting.
Whether or not the children and grandchildren that you've had, are they better off now as a result of your decision to immigrate to the United States over 30 years ago?
Yes, I believe, because my book is not about a comparison between America and Europe.
Right.
I do believe that if I had stayed in Europe, that they would have more trouble finding a satisfying future than they have here. They're all doing exceedingly well here in this country. So from a personal perspective, I have no qualms. America has been extremely good to me, but America today is underperforming. It's exactly what David Brooks says. Over the past 5 years, the political class has done essentially nothing to solve America's problems.
In other words, the representatives of us in a Republican democracy or a representative democracy, where we send them to express our views, and yet they seem to, instead of expressing our views an awful lot, I think what we find from the political class is they manipulate our views, which I think is something entirely different. Do you see the same thing?
Yeah, I see the same thing, and they don't solve our problems. Our problems can be counted on a handful. We have the debt we have to address. We have the immigration issue. We have education that is not satisfactory. We are no longer leaders in the world in terms of the education that we offer our children. So that will have to be addressed. And then we have the whole issue of inequality that needs to be addressed.
You know, I was thinking about something this morning, and I want to just kind of throw it your way if we could, Mr. Jaeger, that if we had our politicians, and again, I come back, is our country really kind of a company? And if we treat it that way, wouldn't it be interesting if we used our representatives in the public, in the public or political class, and we paid them based on commission? In other words, commission on what they get done in the course of a year, commission on the fact of how it plays with the American people in terms of, does it make our lives better? Is it something where it provides a better atmosphere for business to operate? Wouldn't it be interesting if we paid them on commission? What would you think about that?
Yeah, obviously there is so much intrinsic to the system today that is practically impossible. In my book, I advocate to pay every member of Congress in the Senate and in the House of Representatives at least $1 million per year in salary, but deny them the right to accept money from any other sources, so
wow.
that they can be entirely dedicated to the public interest. I mean, the fact that they have to go out and finance their campaigns. In the 50s, if a senator was running for re-election, it cost him about $100,000. Now a Senate campaign costs $20 to $30 million to get elected. Our system has been hijacked by the money people. All of their time and attention goes to to kowtowing to the people that provide them with the money.
And you know what else? They get paid. They get paid whether their candidate wins or loses. So that's kind of the interesting part of it too.
I love to be paid. I love to see a system to pay for performance, because that works in business, and the idea is certainly to be pursued. And in fact, I think government people shouldn't be paid at all if they don't produce the results for the people.
And I agree with you. And that's why I said maybe if we paid them on commission, we'd be a lot better off. Mr. Jaeger, it's been an honor having you on this morning, sir. Thank you so much, and glad you came here, because you offered something already of great value to us today. And again, I hope people read your new book out there, Neither Here Nor There, A First-Generation Immigrant in Search of American Exceptionalism. I think it's wonderful to get it from your perspective. Where can people find your book?
They find it on Amazon.com, and they find it on Barnes & Noble online, and they find it in an e-book format as well as in paperback.
Very good. Frans, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's an honor to talk to you, sir.
It was entirely my pleasure, Gary. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Take care. Frans Jaeger with us here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show. Again, check the book out, Neither Here Nor There, A First-Generation Immigrant in Search of American Exceptionalism. It doesn't talk about politics. Talks about what his look was as an immigrant.